So how do you build a show like this? Well, we're going to kind of plan this out and write this out here. So I'm trying not to rip on Devin Nash here too much with this notepad-like view, but we are using Google Docs instead. That wasn't my objective today, but this is the easiest way to communicate like my thoughts here at the moment. I don't have a name for this show yet, nothing like that. The names aren't as important. A lot of people get caught up on that. They're like, if, you know, people who want to start a podcast or a comic book or whatever, you can tell when they aren't really like into the idea of doing the work of the thing itself, when they get stuck on the idea of what should it be called instead of actually doing the thing. Because you can kind of make that up as you go. AFK chat was just a random name choice. Streamer news was fairly on the nose. First and foremost, you should, here, let's make a list. Let's do a numbered list. You can't do this in Notepad. Also, we can actually improve the scaling a little bit more. First and foremost, brainstorm content ideas. The actual, the tangible thing you want to stream. And you may find that the thing you end up actually making the core focus of the stream isn't necessarily the biggest thing you thought you had at first. So for example, the things that I stream as a creator in general, that's an easy way to start. We have gameplay for video games. Here on Twitch, a couple years ago before I had a kid, I did a lot of Apex streams and Halo streams and Call of Duty streams because I play a lot of first-person shooters and that tends to do well on Twitch, and so I was streaming it. I also want to stream unboxings. I don't really include those in videos anymore. It's a way to interact with you all, preview upcoming video content. I can show you stuff that I have coming in, and we can get a first look at some products. Some of them we can't test necessarily, but that's fine. I also stream Pokemon card openings. Now, I would honestly encourage you to not necessarily, it depends on how solid of an idea you have for your stream already. So let's start there. If you already have a pretty solid idea of like what you want your show to look like, you've thought about this a lot, you can probably skip this step or either briefly kind of be like, okay, I don't need this. But if you are completely clueless, I would go as open and like unrelated as possible. So obviously, unboxings, gameplay, and Pokemon card openings are very loosely or otherwise not at all related things because we have tech, gaming, and Pokemon. But that doesn't mean they can't turn into something, especially here on Twitch, or if you plan, you know, if you plan on streaming multiple times a week, you can have 2 different shows and just make sure that's clearly communicated in your stream schedule, things like that. So we've got unboxings, gameplay, Pokemon card openings, and of course we have the general umbrella of tech, which I will then make a, you know, tech education, which I will make a subcategory of its own. So we have tutorial stuff, review stuff. We have stream feedback, which is a show that I ran in video form called Stream Critique. That's coming back, by the way. You can head to this website, streamguides.gg/streamcritique, if you want to have your stream featured in a video / on stream and actually reviewed for tangible feedback on how to improve. General, like, setup advice. And then we have news, which I'm not writing in this particular list because we're feeding that back over to Streamer News, which is a show I'm already running. So worth keeping in mind there. We could just do, like, general testing and tweaking. So this covers, like, in today's stream, I may move a monitor over and actually get it hooked up and usable, testing things out for the first time where I don't have a completely solid idea of what the answer to a question is or what I want to convey in a video. So it can be like practice or research for a video, or a gadget that I just want to play with that I don't necessarily have the time to make a video on. These are the things I want to talk about. So these are my content ideas that we can cover in a show. Now, these aren't necessarily related, but then we can go from there and plan out what we think would actually be successful. Now, for this, you may need a little bit of experience streaming. So if you've never streamed before and you're kind of working through this, my recommendation would honestly be to go through each of this list, and here I can even write that down, and do some test content, be it videos, streams, whatever. And we talked about this on a previous, on the Discord community, the Discord stage channel we did yesterday. Go through, and even if you make content that no one sees, that you keep private, unlisted, or you just delete after you make it, go through and make content in these categories, both to figure out whether or not you like it, whether or not you like the workflow, also see if it does well. If you make some videos, do some feeler videos for a couple months and see, you know, what bites you get and things like that, and see what actually works for you. Because you may find that when you get in here, say, which happens a lot for gaming specifically, you may get in here and start streaming some gameplay, and you're like, well, crap, this actually wasn't very fun, or I was a little too distracted with the game to interact with chat and I missed out on my first chatters and that's not a good feeling at all. Or I was too distracted by chatters to actually focus on the game and that didn't really work out as a game stream either. You may find these things out if you've never done this before. So step 2 would be test content live or offline. So I'm gonna put this in parentheses because this isn't a necessary step, or is it one that will apply to everyone? But I won't say as many content ideas as you can, but kind of like make sure you hit all the heavy hitters of what you actually want to do. Like really think long and hard about what is it that you want to make and why. Evaluate why. So for certain things like gameplay, why do you want to make gameplay streams? Why do you want to stream it? Is it because everyone else does it? Does that mean that you actually want to do it? Is it because you consider that the default format of streaming like so many people do? Does that mean that's actually what you want to do? Do you enjoy gaming as your luxury kind of you time that you want to keep as entertainment or passive relaxation for you? If so, turning that into work may not be the right idea at all. So you have some stuff to work through there. And I want people to make sure that they are really going for the right idea for them. And that may not always be the case. However, look at these big things and decide like you could do things adjacent to it, or you could turn it into an aspect of your show. So then we prioritize your topics here. So prioritize. This means that you're going to take, and once you've either tested your content or building on the experience of what you already have done or made or have viewers for, then you decide what would be the most successful if you have the data or experience for that, or what you felt the most comfortable or the most effective or got the most enjoyment out of doing. So this is kind of different for me because I very much enjoyed game streaming, but I also felt that weird obligation where every time I played that I should be game streaming, which isn't what I always want to do. Sometimes I just want to play Apex with the boys, not stream Apex and perform for everyone else and not get to pay a close attention to the game. Secondarily, and here I'm going to write this down. Did you enjoy it the most? Secondarily, performance is an inclusion here. So for me, given my lengthier career and all of that, I'm at a bit of an advantage here. But I know I love you all so much, all of you stream viewers watching right now, and video people too. But my gaming content overall has been my least successful, like my straightforward, I'm going to make gaming content about this game for the sake of gaming. That kind of content has been my least successful and least worthwhile content I have produced throughout my entire career. From start when that was all I was doing, to my transition to tech, to even a year ago when I was streaming Apex on Twitch right now. I love you all, but you all show up to talk about tech, to talk about streaming, and to get interactivity regarding that, not to watch me play Apex. And especially when I'm rusty and don't get to play a ton, what's the point? That doesn't mean, as Cujo is spoiling and pointing out in chat, that doesn't mean you don't get to play games. So there's a couple ways you can do this here. So we're going to go ahead and add our performance. So I know from experience and from my data that gaming is not super, even if it's something I enjoy or something I want to do, it's not something that is super successful. So for me, even though I've tried it a few times, and that's how actually I got up to affiliate, but I was also secretly, actually, we'll get to that. So for me, it doesn't make sense really whatsoever to turn this Twitch channel or to make my stream content all about gameplay. Doesn't make sense. It's a hard ladder to climb. I'll never be like super big, in the scrolling of pages of people streaming. So overall, it just doesn't make sense for me to stream gameplay. That doesn't mean I don't get to utilize gameplay for my streams though, or don't get to play games in the first place, of course, and doesn't mean that it can't be a part of my show. So we have prioritized here by my experience. You can figure out what you enjoyed the most, what you got the most community or interaction from, what opens up the most doors of opportunities for you. We talked during my last stream about figuring out your career goals and identifying the jobs around that and how reverse engineering your way up to getting that dream job. Which one of these gets you closest to that? So that is also gets closest to career goals. So we know from that tech education umbrella for sure is number one, and we could pick and choose here from these. Unboxings is inherently going to be related because that's number two. But I also enjoy gameplay, and I also enjoy my Pokemon card openings. So then we can start formatting our show based on this limited amount of information already.
Building a stream show is cool, but you don't want it to look amateurish. Nerd or Die takes your stream to the next level with their high-quality, customizable stream packs full of layouts, widgets, overlays, alerts, and more, with source files available to make it your own and one-click easy setup. Consider checking out StreamOS, a nostalgic stream layout reflective of yours truly to remind your viewers of a simpler time. Head on over to eposvox.gg/nerdordie and save 15% with coupon code EposVox at checkout.
Like, we have barely scratched the surface, and from what I have listed right here, we can plan a show. So I'm not even going to add another point right now. We will come back to this, and we'll just call this heading 2. We'll call this Twitch Show of the Vox. So what will my show be about? Obviously, I've thought about this a little bit in advance in order to be able to explain this to you guys, but based on the basic logic that we have worked through here, we can figure this out. So it should be, we'll make just a bulleted list. It should be a tech show. So under that, we can then plan out, and you don't want to get caught up in too many of the tiny, like, in the weeds or granular details just yet, but we can start planning out some of those details. So it's a tech show, which means we're probably going to be in either just chatting, like we are now, or there's a science and technology category. I struggle with this even on YouTube because there's a tech and an education category. There's not an education category currently on Twitch. There's an educational tag, which I have used for this stream for the first time because I didn't know that existed. But there's not an educational category. But you can pick out your category based on what your primary content piece is going to be. And obviously, if you're on YouTube, category doesn't matter a whole lot here. And I think I had someone asking if, sorry, John Quattro, can you apply this idea to VOD content too? 100%. So actually, we're going to wrap around to why that matters in just a minute, actually. Obviously, on YouTube, category doesn't matter, but treat the category as the general idea or theme of the show. So we can fit in just chatting or science and technology. Science and technology is probably good. Well, Cujo's pointing it. I was literally reading that as I was saying that. Probably good because of the low viewership and for my granular tech testing. Like if I'm doing some really nerdy testing of a product, that would fall under science and technology. But the more Q&A kind of interactivity parts would make more sense than just chatting. We could either just primarily dominate science and technology to see if we can boost that for views, keeping in mind that that category, if we go to Twitch right now, there's a back and forth here. Because if we go to Twitch as a website right now, it's going to autoplay some streams that I don't want. In terms of categories, obviously that's categories we think you'll like, but just categories in general, just chatting is gonna stay close to the top. But unless I get at least 5.3k view, wait. Is it? Oh, this is recommended for me. Hang on. Viewers. I was like, why is 5 higher than 142? So unless we get higher than like 30k viewers at a time, we're not gonna boost science and technology up into the part where people are looking for it, other than people who are already coming for me, which as a new creator, you can't really rely on that. What if we go into science? What spelling is that? Not behind the scenes. There's a cat. Can I not search for the category? Science. Yeah, I can't even. I'm going to have to scroll a while to find the category. It may not even show up, because currently it's only finding the search bar. Doesn't exist right now. I mean, obviously it exists, but it's not. So you see the dilemma here. Both could be advantageous, and I kind of wish in some regards we could dual category. But this would be an opportunity where perhaps you alternate categories within a show based on what you're actually doing. You know, how that goes. Otherwise, just chatting is probably a more likely fit, at least for the majority of the content that might be up here. Top science is 400 streams. Yeah, so that would be a little bit hard to really boost into getting new viewers. And that's kind of an objective on Twitch, is that is the game you have to play. That may not be my personal priority, because I already have an existing audience base and I'm just trying to get you all to watch and educate you. At the same time, I am still trying to grow my Twitch, so getting new viewers through Twitch, possibly a benefit. Girl Thulu is asking about the podcast category. That would be advantageous if you are doing a show like this and you have, like, it's going to be a set time, which we're going to talk about, and go back and forth, or have guests, and you don't have a locked off, like, category that is a non-gaming category on Twitch, so science, whatever. Podcasts would probably be perfect if it's more of a talk showy kind of thing, although Cujo's asking about talk show category. I don't know if that's a category or a tag. Either way, yes, you could 100% fit in there if you're like, this is my show, I'm going to talk about my interests and my hobbies and things like that. And honestly, the thing is here, I operate in a little bit more of a literal kind of thing. As we have learned in recent years, the categories on Twitch are very much flexible and they don't have to be super literal. So you could 100% go forth as a podcast or talk show or whatever and stick with it and stay there and be totally fine. No reason you necessarily couldn't. So honestly, I will throw that in here. Like, you can be a little bit flexible. You run into the possibility of screwing yourself if you try to do a specific game category, because obviously the gameplay streams are going to take priority over that. So I know it's going to be a tech show. I know it's going to fall into these categories. You could be doing gameplay. So if you're streaming gameplay, obviously go with the game that you're streaming. Keep that in your head, because I'm specifically overlooking this. So we have tech show. It's going here. Then we have to plan out what's going to be in the show, which is the topics we talked about here earlier. So getting back to John Quattro's question, told you I'd come back, about this applying to VODs. So they may just be asking about the offline thing. And if so, yes, 100%. If you are just trying to get better with videos or test for yourself, 100% just record the videos and edit them and then keep them unlisted or private. No one ever has to know you did it, and you can test for yourself. Alternatively, you never really have to upload it, or you can upload to side channels. Same thing with these shows. If you want to just test it out, the format, either just stream to nothing or do a local recording and then delete it, or stream to a side channel where only like your inner circle on your Discord or something gets access to it, and you can then flip it back around and actually pilot it later on. If you think about TV shows, this is, I think, less common these days, where the pilots actually just turn into the first episode. But typically with TV shows, the TV studio or the company or whatever pitching the TV show will often get to a certain stage where they then go plan and film a pilot with the actual cast and things like that. The first episode of a show is often the pilot episode, which is basically the test episode where you're trying to sell the show as, this is what we want to do. Would you like to buy our show? Now, sometimes the pilot never sees the light of day or until after the show ends and it gets leaked or something like that. But sometimes the pilot becomes the first episode. And if it's not been funded or planned out ahead of time, that pilot could be very different than the rest of the show. I believe House, the show with Hugh Laurie, was one of those shows where the pilot has completely different like lighting and moods and visuals and a completely different feel from the rest of the first season. You have shows like The Office where the whole first season was a drastic difference from the rest of the show, and then they completely changed the show. A little different, but the pilot episode itself, the very first episode of the show, is very different from the second episode and moving forward. That is the same concept where you test it out, get feedback, and either it's successful and you just make it the first official episode, or you scrap it and you start over, or you're like, okay, this idea works. I don't like this piece of content I made, but I learned some lessons from it, and I'm going to move forward with this idea and maybe only share the pilot episode to patrons or something. And the same thing with the inner circle on Discord. If you have an existing fan funding base of some sort, be it on Patreon, Ko-fi, OnlyFans, Twitter, super follows, YouTube channel members, that's great content to share with them because they get to enjoy it even if it doesn't work for your channel to go public. Or you may find that there is a big following for that, and that can result in two things. That can result in either you get a big enough response from your Patreon, effectively, group where you're like, okay, I need to make this actual public content and just keep re-releasing it. And even if it's not as successful as your other public content, you keep making it because that's what people are paying you for, and that's worth more than the views. I'm going to point you towards my buddy Wendell from Level 1 Techs. He runs a tech channel much like my own, and if you look at their videos, I don't have a hotkey set up for this scene for some reason. Most of their videos are their daily news show. Now, I consider this an issue in a little bit in the sense that it could cost them viewership due to the lower CTR click-through rates on their videos of the actual individual news episodes and the like. But they do a daily news show with their core group here that is supported by their patrons, by their fan funders. And they do this every day because that is the big thing that their entire Patreon subscription group is up for. And so they are literally funding this content, and it's still content that's getting views and bringing new viewers in, but their Patreon group is paying for this and demanding it, and that is ultimately who they're supposed to be beholden to, right? You may also end up in a secondary scenario, or tertiary at this point maybe, where you're only making that content from Patreon, where you're making that content exclusively for Patreon. So you're funneling people from your public viewership, generally through your normal videos, and then they support you on Patreon or whatever your private Twitch subs, linked to Discord, whatever. That's a way to leverage Twitch and streaming specifically, is you can get people to subscribe on Twitch, you give them a special role on Discord, secret chat, and then they pay for that through their Twitch subs or whatever. And they continue paying you to make that content, but you never release it publicly. So they are purely joining your fan funding and funding you just to have access to that content. Because you may find that, no, it doesn't really work for public production, especially in the stream world. And be like, okay, my average concurrent viewers on this content is crap, but my diehard subs love it. Then you have sub-only streams, or sub-only videos, or Discord's private night, where you only give it to the people who are your inner circle or who are paying you, or however you want to divide up your fan group from there. And that is an extremely powerful position to be in. And so if you find yourself there, don't consider it a mistake or be like, why isn't this working? I still want to make the content. Leverage that heavily.